Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing good out there. My apologies. I haven't been on very much this year. Been a bit of a hectic year, but thankfully a really creative year. Lots of great music coming in and going out, which is always exciting. And I hope it's been the same for everybody out there. But yeah, I did want to get at least one more video out for the year. So I think I have 2, maybe 3 done for the year. I just kind of wanted to do my favorite plugins from this year, some of my favorite tools that have come out and things that have found their way into my workflow. Talk about, what I love about them, what I would love to see in them, and where I'm using them. It is 10 plugins, but not really. It's a bundle and then 9 other plugins, and one of the plugins isn't exactly new, but as a significant upgrade. So yeah, let's just dive in. First up is the Make Believe Studio bundle. So yeah, this isn't one plugin, this is several plugins. Anybody that checked out my review of the Soundtech EQ that they put out last year, or if you checked out my top plugins from last year, Soundtech made the list. It's an absolutely incredible plugin, incredible EQ that Make Believe Studios along with Metric Halo put out. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. Along with that plugin, they put out this bundle, and the bundle did technically come out into 2022, but I didn't get to try it until 2023. And it's a really cool bunch of plugins that's very unique to them, very unique to Make Believe Studios and Rick Carson's workflow. Just some fun plugins. They've really got a personality and a style and an attitude to them that comes across not just in the plugins, but if you follow them on Instagram or YouTube, these guys just love what they're doing and they do things in the way they want to do them. And I really respect and appreciate that. And they're putting things out that are unique to the digital domain, which is fun. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about finding cool new tools to use in the digital domain. I mean, that's what this whole channel is about. We'll just kind of quickly go through the bundle because there is, 7 plugins in the bundle. My favorite plugin and the most used one out of the bundle is the EQ. And not often do I get excited about a digital EQ, but this EQ is based off the Metric Halo Channel Strip EQ, which if you haven't tried, that's an all-time great plugin. All-time great EQ, still an EQ I use to this day, or a channel strip that I use to this day. Love it. And my ears tell me, and with some null tests tell me this is the same EQ. Beautiful digital sounding EQ, but what makes this unique is that it's got a bit of what Metric Halo calls a little bit of sauce on it, and it's got some harmonic modeling of a Pi console in it, which is cool, a unique sound we don't really have in the box. You can dial in that sauce by driving it a little bit, or you can take the sauce off and just have it totally clean, which is great. But yeah, super fun, very much like a Pro Q3. This thing works on quick keys. You just need to learn what the commands are, but really quick, easy, fun EQ to use that sounds great, and it's zero latency, which is true of Metric Halo across the board. Zero latency and low CPU usage, so you can use a bazillion of these things and they sound great. Yeah, and they released an update earlier this year and really improved some of the workflow. We got some AB, we got some undo, which is awesome. We have some resizing now available, which is good, because when these first came out, the workflow on them wasn't great, and the workflow on some of them I still think could use some work, but their uniqueness really separates them from the workflow problems. They've got this Kevin's limiter, which there's no settings. It's just on or off, and it's Kevin's limiter settings. Don't really know much about this plugin. The documentation is very, very minimal about this. Yeah, it's just on. It's got a bit of color to it, and it really kind of pops things forward in a mix in a nice way. What I don't like about it is that it's just adding volume without the ability to easily A/B. So I do wish there was a global output on it so you can gain it down, and maybe an input as well, because we don't know how we should be hitting this thing at on. It's just on. And I like the fact that it's forcing you to use your ears and they want you to be listening, and that's cool and great. But the ability to quickly A/B in a volume matched setting would be really cool. But yeah, this one's just a limiter, and it just goes on and adds a little bit of weight to something and kind of pops it forward in the mix in a really nice way. But yeah, this one, along with some of the other ones, you'll see I feel like there needs to be the ability to easily A/B some global input and output kind of controls would be wonderful. Good math. Again, not a lot of information about what this plugin is. I think the manual says call it a gain stage, call it a clipper. It does sound like a clipper to me. It sounds like what's happening, but only really if this is engaged. The A-hole, as they call it on the manual. Make sure you play with that. Yeah, the rest of it just seems to be clean gain from what I can gather. So just changing your perspective on some things. But once you engage this, you do get some coloring, some harmonics. It feels like a clipper. Maybe the gold is a Lavry gold. I don't know. It would be great if there was like a global input and a global output that were separate from these things, from these volume controls here, so that you could easily A/B what you were doing. Sounds like a clipper. Sounds like a pretty nice clipper. These next three, the parallels, these are really cool plugins, and these are all over my mixes. Oh, I got all these in here. Yeah, you got 3 parallel processes that are from Rick Carson's workflow, things that he has built up into his mix chains, and they sound really great, and I think they're really cool. They're very simple. You just have a blend to taste. You can use them as an insert directly on your channel, or you can use them as an aux to send to. I prefer the aux route because the insert route, again, there's no way to volume match, so you're just getting louder instead of being able to blend it in and then kind of dial back your level. The only way you can do it is with the fader, and if you want to be able to hear what you're doing in a kind of a volume match setting, it's really hard, but thankfully you can use this as an aux send. Parallel process 1 is for the snare. It's a really great boosh. If you're looking to add some like body and thickness to a snare, it's great. The second one is recommended for kick and snare, but I mean, use these wherever you want, really. But it adds a lot of nice clarity, really makes them stand out in a mix in a really clean way. And then you've got one for an instrument bus, guitar, synth, strings, piano. But again, try these all out wherever you want to try them out. They sound really great, and I think they're really unique. They're built off somebody's workflow, and you're dialing them in. They're really quick and simple to use. I love them. I think they sound great. And then the last one, which this would be the one I use the least, it's impulse response sprees, which I've looked up what it is in the manual, and it sounds like there's some history to this, but they don't really give us what the history is. It's an impulse response used on bass and guitar cabs. I don't generally find I putting it on guitar cabs, but I do love it on bass. And again, really, really simple. You just playing around with all the different settings and see what you get. But this one I use the least. Certainly the parallel processes I'm using in the mix context. The clipper I've used in mastering in a mix, and the limiter I've used in mix and mastering as well. And then the EQ I use absolutely everywhere. I think it's a great sounding EQ and super fun, and a little bit of a different sound. Good little switch up for all of us that use the Pro Q3 everywhere. This is a great alternate option for you. We'll stick with EQs that I love this year, and that's going to be the P440 Sweet Spot from Pulsar Modular. I've used this thing a ton since it came out. Lots of masters, lots of mixes. But yeah, really great sounding EQ with a ton of different ways to subtly or dramatically change the tone and feel of your source material or whatever you're affecting. It's a very deep plugin. I mean, you can use it very simply and very quickly, but there's lots to explore and lots to listen to on this thing. If you've checked out any of the Pulsar Modular stuff, there's a lot of attention to detail and there's a lot of depth to them, which is really cool. And there's a lot of, I mean, it's very aptly named, there's a lot of soul. Ziad, who makes these plugins, puts a lot of care. I've actually had the opportunity to talk with him a bit over the year, and this guy really cares about what he's making, is really passionate about it, and I've been using the P42 Climax, the Abyss, and this a ton over the year, and you can just tell the guy cares. You can hear it, yeah, and then you can, the workflow in them is great. So many different ways to change the tone, from the transformer, the mod circuit, the different hardware options, which is very much like TMT from Brainworks, just a little bit of imperfection on left and right, which you get in the analog world. Your left and your right channel are going to be slightly different, and You get 5 different options of that, 5 different kind of tones. What I really love on it, what I find myself using the most, is the shelves. I find the shelves very, very unique. They're both a bit resonant kind of shelves. So low end one, you're kind of getting that pull tech trick right off the rip, and then the top end, as you're boosting the top, you're kind of ducking a bit of the high mid information. They really change depending on where you are on them, which is really interesting. You get really different feels from notch to notch, which is great. I also really love the filters. The filters are really beautiful sounding, both the top and the bottom. The ability to change the resonance slope on them is also great. And then yeah, so many different ways to change tones. So yeah, the transformer, the hardware modulation, the bias of the plugin, which is again kind of changing how you're pushing it or hitting it a bit. You've got the tight bass option with saturation and some monofolding, and then you've got O2 and soul, which again dials in some harmonic vibe to me. The soul kind of feels like even order harmonics to me, and the O2 kind of feels like odd order harmonics, but like upper harmonics. Really kind of opens things up in a nice way. I could be totally wrong, but it kind of feels like Silk and Sheen from any Neve hardware unit, if you've ever used any of those. Kind of reminiscent of that. So many different ways to change things. And then also this tremor EQ, which is a low frequency kind of bump or weight that you can add into things, which is a unique take. Haven't seen that on an EQ before, and can add a lot of heft to whatever you're doing. A lot of attention to detail put into this thing. It sounds great. The bells all sound great. If you've ever used kind of a Soundtech or a Massenburg kind of EQ, the bells are gonna feel very, very familiar. But again, they've got their own vibe to it. The whole thing's got its own vibe. So you can use it, be really clean and clinical with it, or you can add a lot of soul and flavor to it, which is awesome. Lots of depth, lots of different ways to change things. And from a mastering standpoint, those subtle changes are really welcome options instead of kind of huge shifts in tone. Lots of subtle options. And we'll stick with Pulsar Modular. And I think this came out at the end of 2022, but again, this is one that didn't come into my hands until 2023. And yeah, this is the Pulsar Modular P11 Abyss. This thing is aptly named. I've used this thing a ton in production, in mix, and mastering. I feel like I'm still really just kind of scratching the surface of what you can do with it. Really, the only other compressor that I feel like is as flexible as this thing is maybe the FabFilter C2. But tonally, this thing has way more options than that. It's an intense plugin. It can be very detailed. You can obviously just use it very, very quickly and straight up threshold, ratio, attack, release, sidechain, high pass, your knee. You can really just kind of go to it really quickly. But there's so many options in it. You have lots of different routing. You have a clipper on it, and you can route that into many different spots in the chain, which is really cool. Multiple different oversample nodes, which if you haven't played around the vintage mode, highly recommend. Very cool. And again, you have the transformers, which is almost every plugin, I think, from Pulsar. The ability to change the transformer and where you're hitting a transformer. Again, you have mod and you have soul. And then, yeah, I mean, you've got different sidechain EQs and where you can pop those into the signal path, which is very, very cool and useful. Yeah, you have input and output saturation and 3 different versions of that on the input and outputs. And again, you have the O2, and you have the option of where you put the O2 in the signal path, what dry controls the outputs. Again, where all of this is sitting in the signal path, and you have a clipper, which sounds great, and you have the option to limit as well. So this thing is intense, very aptly named. I highly recommend, if you're going to check it out, just dive into some of the presets. A lot of care and time was put into these presets, and a lot of matching hardware units to show the versatility of what this thing can do. And it's very versatile, and there's some wicked presets in there. So highly recommend checking those out to see what this thing can do. And what I love about Pulsar, if you know me, you know I'm a manual nerd. The Pulsar manuals are absolutely incredible and well worth the read. Just like the plugins, a lot of time and care put into them, a lot of depth to what they're doing. So I highly recommend checking it out, and constantly being updated and improved, and really listens to community and really cares about how people are using the plugins and the experience that they're having with them. So definitely recommend checking them out. All right, on to one of the coolest plugins that's come out this year, and this just came out a couple of months ago, but this is one of my favorite plugins of this year for sure, and that's the Sound City Studios plugin from Universal Audio. It's a room emulation plugin, but it is so much more than that. It's a very unique take on this. It's really taking the signal, some of the signal paths and chains and workflow out of the studio and putting them at your fingertips. As a room emulation, this thing is incredible. If you've ever used Ocean Way or Hitsville or any of their chambers, any of the convolution kind of plugins that UA's put out with their own tech is really beautiful and phenomenal sounding. This one is in the same category. It sounds absolutely incredible. Lots of different options of where you're putting things in the room, live or tight settings. Maybe you're doing a piano. Lots of different options, which is really cool. The room sounds stunning. I've had Ocean Ways since it came out, and I've never once used it in remake mode. So that's a bit of an interesting mode to me, but the reverb sounds incredible, and as a room, you're not going to go wrong. But to me, that's really not the most interesting part or the best part of this plugin. To me, the best part of this plugin is the dynamics section and the fact that you can use the dynamics and the EQ in the chamber without the room. You can totally bypass the room and just use these three modules, and these three modules can be swapped around into any order that you want and blended in. Well, not the EQ. The EQ's straight up EQ, but you have a mix knob on the dynamic section and on the chamber. But this dynamic section is awesome. It's super versatile. Yeah, I just use this plugin as it's defaulted so that the room's bypassed and I can just use the dynamic section. So what makes the dynamic section so cool is that it's got 3 Dolby encoder modes. The encode, the air, and the crush are 3 different modes off a Dolby encoder unit. Of course, there are other emulations of this kind of stuff out there, but this sounds incredible. And of course, UA to me is the gold standard of sonic quality in the box, and yeah, they just knock this out. But it's not just those modes. The gated mode's great. The bus compressor is awesome. It's modeling their vintage Neve 2254 compressor. I'm pretty sure it's a 2254 2-to-1 with an auto release. I've used the bus compressor as the main bus compressor on a mix. The 1176, I think it's a 20-to-1 ratio, so you can slam your room a bit. But these encoders sound amazing. You have different sidechain filters into the compressor. You have a straight up high pass, and then you have like a tilt thrust kind of API kind of thing. And you can link the left and right channels if you want to, or have them unlinked. Yeah, as I said, I just have this thing defaulted to load up so that I can just use the compressor in parallel. I just love it. It's an incredible parallel option, a very exciting one. Adds a lot of polish and sheen to a mix, kind of adds that record sound. Highly recommend. The EQ, which again, Neve-based EQ, kind of more like a 1084. It sounds incredible. Again, I've used just the EQ on this module, and the chamber sounds really great with 3 different mic options, pre-delay, and they gave you long, medium, and short, which really it's only set to in the actual chamber. From in the manual it says there's only really the long, but they've given you some options, some width options. It's a really unique plugin. Very exciting to see from UA. Feels like a bit of a boundary pushing plugin from them, which, I mean, sonically these guys are, as I said, to me the gold standard, but sometimes from a workflow standpoint or what they're creating standpoint, I feel like sometimes they stay too close to what the analog thing is and don't push the boundary. And while this is emulating everything that's in the studio, it's just a very unique tool. Highly recommend. Awesome plugin. And yeah, we'll just stick with UA here. Capital City mastering compressor, valve compressor, handcrafted by Capital Engineering, the CM5511, which when this first came out, I thought it was going to be modeling something esoteric, but actually it's a very modern compressor. It was built in 2011, came out in 2011, and there's only 4 of these hardware units in existence. Man, this thing sounds phenomenal. Like all UA stuff, you can just put it on and it makes things sound better, and this is no different. Since I got this thing, it just lives on my mix and master bus. It's a phenomenal sounding compressor, lots of range in it, and really interesting that the side chains in them are I think like 320 and 700 is what the side chains are, which are really great, which is really high. I do get to 300. I find 300 a great cutoff when I'm mastering, but I've never gone as high as 700, and it's very interesting that they're going that far. But lots of color, lots of tone. The compression sounds great. Really musical and transparent, kind of velvety, but not velvety. I don't know. It's got a great tone to it. Saturates really wonderfully, distorts really wonderfully. If you want to distort it, it sounds great. A bunch of different ratio options. You can link controls, work mid-side, all those kind of great workflow things. And then again, UA's doing some stuff here. They're getting outside the box a little bit. They're adding some options that aren't a part of the hardware unit, that are digital in the box only options, which is great. There's a mono fold, bit of a mono maker below whatever cutoff frequency you want. It'll be a mono image, which if you don't do when you're mixing and mastering, I highly recommend you check it out. Try monoing out everything from 150 down, from 120 down, from 80 down. You typically find that your bottom end, particularly if you work from a mixing standpoint, or even while you're in production, you'll find that your bottom end just gets a lot more powerful and translates a lot better. And then there's this saturator, which sounds great. So you can just add in more color from the unit, a little bit more heavy-handed. Helps you increase the perceived volume of things. It's a really beautiful sounding saturation, really classy, beautiful sounding thing. Lives on my mix bus. Lives on my mastering bus. Just sounds awesome. Yeah, we'll stay in valve compressor land. I love when emulations come out that are of units that don't already exist in the digital domain. We have so many 1176 options, so many Neve options, so many Pultec options. It's really cool to see units come out that are modeled on something I've never even heard of. Process Audio, which is from Pure Mix, has modeled the Rockruepel Comp.Two, which is a boutique very mute compressor out of Germany. I never even heard of the hardware until the software came out. But this is a great sounding very mute compressor. If you're familiar with very mute compressors, this is going to feel very right at home with this thing. You can be heavy-handed with it, and it'll still feel very, very transparent. You really push the needle on it, which is great and I find very true of a lot of very mute compressors. Lots of great options. Sidechain, you can have just the amp if you just want to use it as a tone box, which is awesome, and you can pop the transformer in and out on it, which is also great. I really do love the sound of this box and pushing it. I actually really love the distortion on it, and actually it lives on my parallel bus chain for my bass, just because I love what it does to bass. Kind of really nice warm distortion on the bass, and kind of really tightens it up in a nice way as well. Highly recommend distorting the thing. So it's great that you can use it as just an amp only mode, which is awesome. But it also lives on my instrument bus, which is everything except for drums and bass for me. So it lives there. I've used it in mastering as well. Sounds incredible. Just a bit of a different color, a unique color. Workflow wise, I do wish there was this AB and undo. It's kind of weird that the Pure Mix Process Audio, they don't have that. They don't have that on the Spice Rack either, which is odd to me. Lots of oversampling options, which all sound great. And they included their console thing, which they have on the Spice Rack too, and I find it more useful on Spice Rack than I do on this. I don't really run multiple instances of this, and I wouldn't really see the need to adjust them from a global spot, but cool that it's there and a unique feature. But yeah, I would love some AB and undo, and a bit more of a auto gain on it too would be awesome. But beautiful sounding compressor. Really loved adding it to the arsenal, and as I said, it lives on my instrument bus, and I've used it in mastering as well. It's got a great color to it. All right, I know I just said it's great when we have things that haven't been modeled to death come out, unique tones, unique sounds, and I'm just gonna follow it up with something that's been modeled to death, which is SSL 4KE. We have a million options of this, and a lot of great ones, UA, Waves, and Brainworks, and then there's a slew of others out there as well. But this is the SSL one, and this came out 2 months ago, maybe in November. I love it. Very familiar with SSL consoles, very familiar with SSL plugins and 4KE channel strip plugins. That's been my main mixing channel strip for a very, very long time now. If you're somebody has worked a lot on either the console or with the plugins, you're going to feel right at home with this. It's the great middle ground for me between the channel strip 2 from SSL and their 4KB channel strip. This kind of lives right in the middle and right where I want it. The channel strip 2, very, very clean and modern sounding, but can quickly sound very brittle to me. It's very broad EQ. This, you get a lot of options, a lot of tone, and the compressor just feels more useful to me than the 4KB compressor, which is based on the bus comp. It doesn't have as much variable control as this does. It comes with 3 different EQs built into it, which is awesome. It defaults to the brown knob, which is the original SSL EQ that came out on the E series. And then you get the black knob, which is a little bit more tighter, a little bit more focused, a little sharper sounding EQ. And then you get the orange, which is apparently not many of these were ever made, but this is Pultec curves, which is available on one of the Brainworks channel strips as well. I think the G series one has that. I never really played around with it much, but I've been playing around with it more on this version. I actually find it really useful, especially when you're just looking for that Pultec feel. And instead of pulling up a Pultec plugin, you can just try this EQ out. Mine defaults to the black knob just because that's what I love, what I'm used to. All the routing on this is great. They have the pre-saturation, which they had on the 4KB. So you can add a little bit of color if you want to, a little bit of density, get into distortion if you want to, which is awesome. It sounds great. It's modeled right to the end of the fader. So the fader's got some drive to it and some color to it as well. And really cool is that you can turn that on and off now. You can do this on the 4KB too. And some cool workflow stuff they've added with this. They've added this width mode, which is super cool. So you can either make things wider or mono them out full spectrum, or you can use high and low cutoffs. So if you're on the low cutoff, anything below that frequency will either be widened or monoed, and same thing for the high. Anything above the high frequency cutoff will be widened or monoed, which is really cool. They've also added this auto makeup offset, which is also really cool because I'm always on about auto gain on compressors, and I love the fact that it has auto gain and it's pretty good auto gain, but if it's not quite to your liking, you can tweak it, which is super nerdy, and I'm very grateful for that addition. So that's a definite gold star for SSL there. But yeah, this thing sounds great. The oversampling sounds great, and if you have never worked with 360 software, I highly recommend checking it out. It's great. You can just put this on everything, pop into the 360, even if you don't have the control surfaces, and just mix from there. It's a really cool experience, really well done, really unique workflow. But yeah, this thing just sounds, to me, it sounds like home. All right, the Schwab Digital Gold Clip, easily the most hyped plugin of the year before it came out. Lots of talk about this thing, and lots of social media. Their Instagram channel was a real tease for a real long time about this plugin, but it finally came out, and it's great sounding clipper. Again, a really kind of cool tone shaping machine that you can subtly change the feel of something, which is really cool. And again, what a plugin similar to Sound City. I don't really use this for the clipper so much. I use it for a couple of the other features, which I think are really unique and sound great. Very, very simple, straightforward plugin, clipper, ceiling, drive, but I don't often use the clipper on this. I really love the gold and the alchemy features on this. The gold is a bit of a compressor, more like just like a density knob. It's a really unique compressor. It sounds super transparent. It just really kind of pushes everything forward. Use this a ton everywhere. You just want things to just stand up a little bit more. This is a really transparent way, a musical way to do that. And then the alchemy as well, kind of like a high frequency compressor or a high frequency roll off. It just kind of makes things sound a little bit more analog, not as harsh. Maybe like you're hitting tape a little bit. Again, really subtle, but beautiful sounding. Honestly, I use these things the most. And then lots of tone options here as well. Box tone, so how does the unit just sound? And these are based off of flat, obviously, is just super clean. Classic, I believe, is based off a Lavry Gold, and I believe the modern is based off an Antelope converter. So yeah, you have different kind of tones there, a little bit of high frequency roll off or low pass filtering. It sounds great. And the Gold, you have two different options, classic and modern, which definitely do have different sounds. And then yeah, modern, hard, and classic clipper modes. And the clipper sounds great, don't get me wrong, just because I don't use it for that solely or mostly. The clipper does sound great. I use this thing in mixing, I use it in mastering. Mixing, really great place for it is kind of really when you want bring out some of those background elements or something that's maybe, but needs to just stand up a little bit more. Backing vocals, reverbs, anything like that. And then anything that's feeling a little bit harsh, or you just want it to feel a little bit more sat into the mix, the Alchemy is really great for that. Workflow wise, this thing's really great. My only wish for it is I feel like the meters don't reset on it very quickly. I feel like I'm not getting real-time information, or that I can't really easily reset them. But it doesn't feel like I can reset the meters really quickly or easily, which I find a little frustrating, but that's pretty minute. The workflow on this thing is really great. And apparently Schwab Digital's coming out with some more stuff this year, so that'll be or in 2024. So that'll be really, really exciting to see what it comes up with. Ozone 11. This is a big update from iZotope, and a really, incredible update. A lot of cool features came out in Ozone 11. Ozone 10 was a big jump, and this is, I feel like, even bigger jump. What I love about Ozone and iZotope is they're a company that's just constantly pushing the edge, which I love. I love that they're really, really trying to be on that edge. Again, a very deep update. Hopefully I'll remember to cover everything in it. The biggest and maybe the most impressive is the fact that you can now manipulate individual elements within a stereo file. And I know this technology exists elsewhere, but my first time engaging with it is within Ozone. So yeah, you can, up here, you can see you can manipulate either the full mix, just the vocals, just the drums, just the bass within a stereo file. And I will be honest, I was suspect about how good this would be, and it's very impressive. Both when you just want to subtly change something within a mix that you've been sent to master, or definitely when you've been sent a mix that's maybe got some problems. You can maybe use some help more on the mix front, and maybe you don't have time to go back and forth with a mix engineer. You can really deep dive in there, and it's pretty phenomenal what you can do. You can just EQ the vocals if you want, or compress them a little bit more. Something's sticking out in the snare drum for you, you can just dial that back or enhance it. Maybe the bottom end is great on everything except for the bass, and you just want to dial back a little bit of bass. And you can use any of the modules available within Ozone on that. But you do have to run multiple instances of Ozone in order for that to work. Very, very cool. Next to that, they added not just in the EQ, but into many of the modules. I think the Clarity, Dynamic EQ, the Exciter, the Dynamics. They've added the ability to manipulate the transient or the sustain separately, which, if you're familiar with the split EQ from Eventide, that was kind of the first one that came out like that, I believe. But yeah, the ability to treat the transient and the sustain separately is incredibly useful, incredibly powerful, very creative. And the fact that it's not just on the EQ, but in the compressors, in the Clarity module, in the Exciter, lots of creative options there, and lots of problem solving options as well. The Clarity module, this does exactly what it says. It just adds clarity to your mix. It's based on a pink noise curve, I believe, and there's a ton of bands with this in this thing. It's just adding clarity to your mix. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. You can kind of dial it in a little bit with the handles if you want. And this, along with the stabilizer module, work really, really well together. You got some attack and release tilt curve on it, which is awesome as well. Really subtly transparent. It doesn't feel, I don't know if you've ever used like Gullfoss or anything like that, but it feels a little more subtle to me and more musical than Gullfoss or the stabilizer from Ozone. Any of those kind of intelligent EQs, a little bit goes a long way. The maximizer, the upward compressor here, which is, I believe, some negative ratio compression, controls macro dynamics by amplifying quiet content. It just makes me think of upward compression is upward compression mixed in parallel. Very similar to the kind of the gold clip compressor. A really great way to add density into your mix or your master, or pop something out that's maybe just needs a bit more density to it, or needs to stand up a little bit but not pop out. Really, really great sounding on a full mix or on an individual element. And then yeah, the master assistant got revamped as well, and a couple of cool features in that. Vocal balance. So when you run the assistant, it checks your vocal balance level, and is it too quiet or is it too loud, and it'll actually tell you. And if you can see I ran it on this mix, give me the purple check mark, told me I'm okay for what I did, but if it wasn't okay, the music rebalance module would be the first thing in your chain. But yeah, the Assistant, they revamped it, added the clarity module in, which works really well with the stabilizer. I found the stabilizer a little bit too aggressive, and I feel like the clarity module helps that make sense when you're using those in combo. And I feel like in Ozone 10, it was really heavy-handed, the Assistant, and feels a little more dialed back to me. I still wish, and this is one of my only 2 wishes for this, I do wish when you were to go to the Assistant, there was just like a really transparent option. If you're looking to use the Assistant, which I think is a phenomenal feature, I think it's great that you can be working all on your own and get somebody else's opinion and get multiple different opinions. Every genre that you pick or custom target that you import will give you a different perspective on your mix or your master. It's like having an assistant in the room. I think it's really phenomenal, but I do wish there was more of a transparent setting, because sometimes it's too much. I really wish they had that option, just transparent mode, like a transparent genre. And yeah, my only other wish for this is for the A/B process to be, I wish they just had a simplified A/B where I can just A/B and not have to set it up, kind of a convoluted process for the A/B. But really impressive set of new tools and enhancements, and there's lots of visual enhancements to this one as well, and definitely the transient sustain and the stem feature, top-notch stuff. And if you have the advanced version, being able to use it as individual elements, super cool. Love it. Well done. All right, final plugin of the year. And this isn't a new plugin, but I got a significant upgrade this year, in my opinion. That's the Studio Rack from Waves. I've loved this plugin, even the original version of it that came out, very, very useful. But the upgrade to this year, what really put it over the top for me is the fact that you can use VST3 plugins, any VST3 plugin you own, with it. So this didn't just make it Wave specific, it opened it up to every plugin you have, which made this an incredibly powerful and creative tool for me. If you haven't checked out Studio Rack, I highly recommend trying out the Studioverse from Waves. Incredible way to check out other people's signal paths and workflow, thought processes, ideas. It's not just a plugin preset, it's a chain preset. So how does Andrew Shep's process his vocals? How does Tono Maserati process his vocals? You can see that their workflows and their chains and their ideas, very, very educational and also very inspiring if you're looking for a different take on something. And it's a great introduction to the power of this plugin. But the fact that you can use any of your VST3 plugins with it now, it just blew the lid off for it and really changed my whole workflow this year in a big dramatic way, which has been a lot of fun. You can build incredibly complex chains. This is kind of a vocal chain that I put together. Just a great starting point to get to a really quick vocal sound with the macros. So I've built a ton of my own signal paths, super creative, super fun, and gets mixes going really, really quickly without doing any super tedious routing. And I'm all about workflow. And my template is pretty dialed, and this dialed it even further. I'm not really using a lot of effect sends anymore. I'm doing everything on the channel, which is great. I really hope that they expand this even more so you can maybe do even some more complex routing within it. But for what it can currently do is phenomenal. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. I'm pretty sure it's a free Waves plugin, I'm pretty sure. So that's a bonus as well. Super, super cool plugin. Highly recommend checking it out. You can do a trial of the Studioverse and just learn what the power of this plugin is, and then build whatever chain you want with any of the plugins you already own, which is very, very cool. So those are my top 10, well, not quite 10, well, more than 10 plugins with the Make Believe bundle from this year. I'm sure I've missed some things. There's so much software coming out every day. Lots of cool stuff coming out, lots of innovative stuff coming out, lots of great emulations coming out. Please let me know if I missed anything or what you're loving this year. Love to hear from you folks, always. And yeah, my apologies again for not really being on much this year. It's been a bit of a chaotic year, but hope to be on more in 2024. And I am really grateful for, a bunch of people have reached out throughout the year and commented on the channel, asking when the next video is coming out and telling me how much they love the content, and that means a lot to me. This is a lot of fun to do. It's great to know that other people are as passionate and as nerdy about plugins and workflow and sonics as I am. certainly learn a lot when I'm doing this, not just from putting together the videos, more so from interacting with people that are commenting. So yeah, really appreciate all of those comments throughout the year, even though I haven't been putting out any videos. And yeah, I hope to rectify that in 2024. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope everybody's having a great holiday season, and I wish everybody a very happy and creative 2024. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Take care.